Okay, I think we're just about ready to start. Everybody ready? Thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Special Education Roundtable. To listen to the roundtable in Spanish, Espanol, please call 339-207-8039. My name is Dr. Joan Mele-McCarthy, and I am a member of the State Board of Education. It is my pleasure to facilitate this virtual roundtable and to welcome the Superintendent Mohammed Choudhury to our roundtable participants, our interpreters, and our viewers. This is really an important event, and I'm so glad that you're sharing your Thursday evening with us. The State Board of Education and MSDE are hosting this roundtable in a series of roundtables and other events to hear about your experiences and ideas for the future of education in Maryland. We are using the feedback to guide the development of a multi-year strategic plan that will implement the blueprint for Maryland's future and strengthen our public school system. This evening, we will hear from students, from families, educators, service providers, community organizations about their experiences with special education and their ideas for innovation to better support students with special needs. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few expectations and housekeeping items. We're live streaming this roundtable on YouTube from 6 to 7:30 p.m. If you are viewing on the live stream, you can use the chat to ask questions and make comments throughout the evening. We will be sharing those towards the end of the roundtable, and we will be using this feedback to inform our planning as well. As a reminder, this meeting will be live streamed and recorded, so your participation implies permission or consent for the recording. When you're not speaking, please stay muted and use the chat functions if we are running late or short on time and you would like to add additional information. And that message was for the participants. Now, let's hear from our Superintendent Choudhury for his opening remarks. Welcome, Superintendent Choudhury.
Thank you, Joan. I really appreciate it. I also see another one of our board members. I think I see Rachel.
Yes, thank you. Rachel McCusker is here.
Yep. Also here today is our Assistant Superintendent of Early Intervention and Special Education, Marcella Frankowski. She can say hello right there. Marcella and her team lead our work around special education. We have work to do in this area. We have done good work. We're not where we need to be. We are at the beginnings of a really amazing law, none like any other state, called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. So I call this the Blueprint Generation. But Maryland can't say it has a world-class education system until special education outcomes also are excellent. And it will mean nothing if those outcomes are not on par with where we want to go. We are only as strong as, I like to say, as our most struggling student. We are only as strong as the best we serve our students with special needs. And I will be the first to say, one of the things I will define success during my tenure is how our special education outcomes look, not only during the pre-K-8 experience, but also post-secondary outcomes, right? All of that matters. And so, again, Maryland cannot say it has a world-class education system until it also has world-class outcomes for its students with special needs. And we must do better, and we need to do better. No one in the country has figured out how to do this work well at scale. We have pockets of excellence. It's our job to figure out how to scale that. And I really appreciate you taking your time on a Thursday evening or Wednesday evening to engage with. Is it Thursday or Wednesday?
Thursday.
Evening. I have long days. Thursday evening to engage with us. And you might be wondering, like, why are you here? Why aren't so and so here and it's important to me that we expand the tent. I told my team I want new names, I want new faces, I want people who are in the trenches doing the work every day. And so that's why you're here. And this will be one of many conversations. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Joan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just do have to say that what you just said is music to my ears. I've been in the field of special education for many, many years, and I've worked with Marcella on a couple of projects. So I'm so excited for this roundtable, and we really want your input and want your information. So thank you, Superintendent. We would like to introduce our participants on the roundtable. So please introduce yourselves by stating your full name, your position title, your business or organization name, and a brief description of your work. Okay, so here we go. First up is Fariha.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Fariha Wahid. I am a special education teacher in Baltimore City for 8 years now, and I teach first, second, and third grade special education.
Thank you. Nia.
Hi, my name is Nia McLean Johnson. I am in PG County. I'm a parent of a 5-year-old and a 21-month-old, both who came to infants and toddlers, when they were from the time they were in the NICU. And so that I'm here to, speak on behalf of, I guess, infants and toddlers. So as a parent who has been engaged with infants and toddlers.
Thank you. How about Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Falduto, a special educator in Dorchester County. I work with 7th and 8th graders, and I have been with the county since 2010.
Thank you. How about Ricardo?
Good evening. My name is Ricardo Hernandez. I'm a high school assistant principal with Montgomery County Public Schools, and I oversee our Learning and Academic Disabilities program, LAD, and our LFI program, which is Learning for Independence, as the overseeing administrator.
Thank you. How about Bianca?
Hello, everyone. My name is Blanca Tapowasto, and I am a parent of a special needs son who was born at 1 pound, 6 ounces, 24-week gestation. And so he has been a special needs student for his entire tenure. I am a self-employed tutor and only one of the 2 national tutors and agents for Huntington Learning Center as a part-time employee.
Thank you. So Blanca, I did not have my glasses on. I thought that was an I instead of an L. I apologize. Okay. Suzanne.
Good evening. I'm Suzanne Taylor. I'm a special ed inclusion teacher and reading specialist on the middle school level. I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th graders.
Great. Kyle.
My name is Kyle Martz. I'm a 6th grade language arts teacher and in Washington Middle School.
And thank you. Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Marsiglia. I work for Baltimore County Public Schools. I am a special education department chair at the middle school level. So I oversee everything from instruction, inclusion, push-in, IEP supports. My whole team runs our whole department. So I oversee all of them.
Thank you. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm the mother of 2 children in Somerset County. They both are special needs children.
Thank you, Lisa, for being with us. Alexandra.
Alexandra Kim, mother of a 13-year-old boy who has mild autism. He's been in the special education program since he was 2.5, all the way through 8th grade now.
Thank you. Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz Narabas. I am the Vision Instructional Specialist for Montgomery County Public Schools. I support many vision teachers and many families in the area, as well as all of the students and doing all the testing and the intakes and things like that. I've been in the vision for about 30 years.
Thank you, Liz. How about Melanie? No? Okay. How about Jennifer?
Hello. Hi, everyone. So thankful to be in this space tonight. My name is Jennifer White Johnson, currently residing in Baltimore County. I am a mother and an art activist to an amazing 9-year-old autistic boy who's also premature. So I'm glad to see solidarity among other NICU moms in tonight. So he's autistic and has been, in special education since, he was 2 years old. I formerly taught at Bowie State University to many disabled kids and disabled college students, and also currently teaching at the University of Minnesota, where a lot of my students have disabilities as well.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yvette.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Yvette Day. I actually have been with Anne Arundel County Public Schools for 2 years now. I'm an occupational therapist, and I see students from pre-K all the way to 12th grade.
Thank you. Annabelle.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Annabelle Quinn from Baltimore City School. I work with students with significant cognitive disabilities, receiving the majority of their support and services outside of the general education classroom in a specialized program.
Thank you very much. Did I miss anyone? Did everyone get an opportunity to introduce themselves? Go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, I am Robert Durrell, and I'm a parent of a deaf child. He's a deaf student in Maryland. And I'm the president of an association at that school. And my child is 5 years old, and he's deaf with a disability. And I'm happy to be here tonight.
Well, we're happy to have you. Thank you for joining us. So thank you, everyone, for introducing yourself. Oh, did I leave someone out?
Yeah, my name is Melanie Washington. And
Melanie, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
That's okay. I'm Melanie Washington. I'm here with my husband, Michael Washington, and we have a 19-year-old son on the autism spectrum who has a non-public placement in the Howard County Public School System.
Thank you very much. I had called your name before, but somehow we didn't hear from you. So thank you for coming forward. Appreciate that. So thank you all for introducing yourselves. And as we transition into our questions, we're looking forward to a very rich and robust conversation for all of this important information. As the superintendent said, we want to and must do better for our students who struggle in school or students who have disabilities. So this is a really important event and near and dear to all of our hearts. We have a lot to discuss and we have a limited amount of time. So each participant chose questions ahead of time, and the questions that they chose are near and dear to their hearts. So we'll be calling on you for those specific questions that you indicated you would like to respond to. And if you have ideas that you would like to add and you weren't called on, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. And to our YouTube viewers, please share your thoughts on the questions in the chat. Right, so here we go. The first question: students with disabilities benefit from individualized delivery of specially designed instruction. What instructional strategies and practices are working well? What needs to be better? And how would you make improvements? All right, Elizabeth, would you like to respond to that?
Sure, thank you. So my school is in Esau Regional Center, which means we have students from the northeast to the southeast of our county are transported to our building. With that, that means that our Esau special education population has dramatically increased in the last 3 years. I've been at this school for 7 years, and our numbers have quadrupled in this department. With that, our training, for lack of a better word, and how to not only utilize ESOL strategies, but special education strategies that transcend the barrier between language and cognitive abilities, learning styles, is pretty lacking. It's just something I think that's new, something that has exploded in terms of numbers. And so we are constantly trying to find new ways. The things that have been successful in reaching those students are truly when we're able to marry the two worlds of primary language with English. While the ESOL program talks integration and really wants students to be integrated as much as possible and kind of immersed in the American culture, when we're talking about students that have specific learning disabilities, or have a more severe cognitive disability, that immersion often causes confusion, and so that they're not getting as much in English, and then what's getting lost in translation, they're trying to compensate in Spanish, and that just creates this kind of chaotic world for them. In our ability to create really targeted small group instruction, especially when it comes to readings and focusing on phonics, we found a lot of success. But with that, we're talking small groups of 10 or less. If we're really implementing decoding skills, we're talking groups of 3 and 4. And with that, in the perfect world, we would be able to meet in those groups 3-4 times a day. At the middle school level, we don't have, like a reading time of day like we would in the elementary school, where we're able to kind of fluctuate our schedule. And so it's really challenging to pull those targeted small groups with limited staff. So that would kind of be our number one dream, right? Would be to have more staff where we can actually pull those small groups, target skills, group kids truly based on ability, and not kind of shoot for that general, okay, everyone's kind of 3 grades below, so let's focus there.
Sure.
And we also have a regional program which focuses on behavior. And so when we are working with instructional strategies, the kids that are coming to us in those programs are coming oftentimes on grade level, and their behavior is what's impeding their ability to prove their academic ability. And so when we kind of merge these two worlds together, where students that are either trauma, which is driving their behavior, or students with autism who are learning how to communicate and show their communication properly through behavior, those two worlds together make it pretty difficult for both groups to learn at the same time. And so again, it's all back to that small group setting where you can target exactly what that kiddo needs and what even a small group of kids needs, not shooting for that kind of general masses, which I think we oftentimes do because that's the best way to try to fit everybody in as opposed to forgetting somebody.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was very specific feedback, and we appreciate that.
Sure.
Mary, how about you? Would you like to comment on that question?
Sure. In our county, we recently had a teacher at training where we kind of partnered the general educators and special educators over the summer, and I saw great benefit from that, where we had a chance to sit down at the table, collaborate, and really break down the instruction, what is important, kind of hear each other out, because a lot of times you kind of hit the ground running when the school year starts. So kind of that's working well with all the different virtual and different things that were changes. It has been a couple years since we did that training. But I really saw a lot of benefit and a lot of understanding between the general educators and special educators offering that. For our students with the most significant disabilities, which I work with, the content that we work with is linked to the essential elements. So we, in the general education setting, they're learning the same topic, but the materials that we use are modified to assess the student's knowledge of those modified content standards. The majority of time, we are able to kind of partner that and do it in the general education setting. So while the teacher is using different strategies that are successful, we use the co-planning time to kind of see what can work together, and then when need be, we pull out and work in the small group and work on those skills. But it's really working well, collaborating and breaking it down and kind of using that for the instruction. We, implement the strategies that are needed that based on the students' IEPs. And we've seen a lot of success with the students, especially with their communication being with their same age peer models. When we are able to, instead of saying, let's go into a separate classroom with everyone who's at the same level, we kind of are able to work on that. It's still a machine that we're working on and trying to kind of make it run well. So some of the things that I think that we could do to kind of make that better, if teacher turnover is a challenge at times, and maybe offering or providing a more condensed version of a training of what our vision and mindset of that specially designed instruction to be successful can be. If a student starts in the middle of the year, a way that they can really see and get on board instead of starting over again from everything, just a way to keep it going, giving that vision of what it should look like when we're working with those students with the most significant disabilities. And like I said, co-planning, it is hard to carve out that time, especially in the testing world when everything's going, but it is essential for those students' success. If we don't plan together, if we don't work together to make a plan when you're in the middle of the instruction, it doesn't happen. So a lot of times in order to access our students, we need to add visuals, we need to break it down, we need that modified content. So just having more opportunities, whether it's summertime, whether it's during professional development, to be able to kind of work together, whether it's workshops that we can offer, and even the instructional assistants, getting them on board. There are hands and feet when we can't be there. I can't be in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at the same time. So really finding a way to get them trained so that we can really make the most out of what we're doing and explain the why, give them that motivation, maybe create an incentive, incentivize really getting everyone on board and changing that mindset of this is where the students belong, this is how they can learn, this is what we need to do to break that down for them, and sharing testimonies just like people are going to be doing tonight. Sharing the story of Carly Fleshman, being able to show the success that we see. So
thank you. That's great. Thank you very much. And I'm hearing training and co-planning as a theme so far. I'd like to go to Yvette, who is an OT. So can you comment on this question?
Absolutely, absolutely. So of course, in occupational therapy, I'm collaborating with special educators as well as general educators. So there's a certain theme that I do encounter when I'm actually working with special educators. They seem to be already aware about the needs of our students, the individualized needs. When I go over to the general education setting, I find that they are kind of a little puzzled, so to speak. I see that he's here, but I really don't know what to do. So I'm noticing that a lot, and that's through elementary all the way, like I was mentioning, through high school. So what has worked really well for me, which I've seen with the special educators, is I start there working with them, we work together, and then I can think about a specific instance with a general educator. We were working with one of our students, and she was open. She was willing to kind of take on, so to speak. And I think that's kind of what we're looking for: people that are open, people that are empathetic. They want to learn. Kind of like what the other person was speaking about with the trainings, professional developments, things of that nature to kind of integrate. And also kind of looking at the child holistically. I really think that we just need to look at each child. What are their needs? Some classes I may go into and I'll see them working on something, but my special education students can be doing the same thing. How do we bridge that gap? How do we integrate whatever they're teaching at the general education setting and making it, possible for them to engage as well? Something that comes to mind is at the middle school. They were talking about a bank, and they had, you know, she had a whole PowerPoint about a bank. And then I look and I see my students, they're coloring. And I walk in and I'm wondering, so I go back to my special educator and we're talking about it. And I said, you know, I mean, we can do banking. I mean, we can write checks. We can bring a bank with coins. I mean, there's the limited, you know, possibilities for them to actually engage in what is happening in the general education setting.
Thank you for that insight. Because yes, sometimes for general ed teachers, it's hard for them to get a sense of how do I give access to the general ed curriculum. And so it's really important for the special ed and the instructional support personnel to really have that collaboration and working and interprofessional practice. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah, and also may I say, and also
Yeah.
empowering them to make it seem like they're not overwhelmed. There's another thing on my list. It's another thing to check off. I was talking to a teacher's assistant today, and she was just mentioning maybe, I mean, we could be the ones, we can bridge the gap. So we can work with the general educator and we can be the ones, we're not grading, right? We're not, you know, maybe we can be the ones that are planning or talking about that with the special educator, and the general educator can just say, this is what we're going to be doing. So let's talk about it. How can we individualize this so that, you know, they can benefit?
Right.
Thank you.
So important. Thank you. I want to turn to Jen now, who has a child with autism. Where is Jen? And I'd like you to comment on this question as well. Are you here? All right. I'm not seeing you. So we can come back to her. How about Suzanne and Kyle? You are special ed and general ed teachers, and I'm assuming you have a nice collaboration. So would you like to respond?
Yes, I have to echo what the first three ladies were saying. Elizabeth, I talked so meaningfully about the importance of small group instruction and us having such limited staff with which to do it meaningfully. One of the things that I have noticed, and it really has become, I think, more of a need over the course of the past couple years with COVID, and kids have gotten so further behind because of the screen time. But it seems that we almost have a gap in services along that continuum of special education services. I've been teaching for a long time, and I started out teaching in a special education resource room, then went to inclusion. And this is not to knock inclusion at all, because it does have its benefits. But I would say over the course of the past couple of years, with some of the gaps, the learning gaps and the deficiencies I'm seeing, I wonder if we don't need to add resource again to that continuum of services, not in place of inclusion, but as another option. It seems like so oftentimes when I have a kid who's really struggling in that gen ed setting, if we want to talk about least restrictive environment and placement, the only other option is self-contained. And that certainly isn't the right option for the child. They can certainly work within that area, but maybe they need it taught a different way, or maybe they need it in a smaller group setting or something like that. I just could really see the benefits of that coming back.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Kyle, would you like to respond as well?
Sure. I was in prior to, well, I started out in special ed, did that for 11 years, and then with as with Suzanne, Mrs. Taylor, we was there when inclusion came to Maryland, and have since been in typical ed for past 20 years, and servicing special ed kids all along the way because of the inclusion component. I see a definite value in having small group kids with IEPs and special needs, and I'm speaking from an ELA standpoint. So I'm trying not to brush everything with broad strokes here. The whole whole school system. But I see a definite need with, or a benefit of special ed students with IEPs. Their needs, at least in my classroom, are very different than the typical ed kids who we're getting ready for testing, we're getting ready for NCAP, we're trying to move on for to be career ready, college and career ready. I don't know what the answer is, although I see the value of a smaller group, maybe a pull out once a day or once a week where kids can work on these. And I'm not exactly sure what happens with the SDI. I know that our kids are pulled out once a week with that, and the special ed teachers work on skills and goals with them. So they'll take up more time. Definitely more more staff to service the needs of the great needs of the special ed kids.
Thank you. And to finish off this question, I'm wondering if Annabelle has a brief response so we can move on to the next one. But Annabelle, please feel free.
Yes, mine will be very specific instructional strategies that really work well with our students. The use of explicit instruction really works with them when the content, skills, and concepts are explicitly taught, just by showing and really telling them what to do while they are solving problems. Of course, a small group versus whole group, small group, this instruction really works with our students as well. And also a very structured, organized, predictable learning environment really works for our students especially with our students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. And the practice that we need to be better at for our students is, I think we need to be better at creating a student-centered plan wherein when a student transitions to a lesser restrictive environment, that we are also preparing and supporting the general education teachers, that they are really truly understanding the whole child and, the student's skills and interests and needs, and really, special education and general education teachers come together, and parents as well as the administrators, to really sit down and collaborate and discuss the support and all that the students need in order for that student to access and be successful in the general education setting. And I think we need training for that.
And agreed, and that seems to be a pretty consistent theme for the responses: training, co-planning, collaboration, and also work with general ed teachers so they truly understand all of the needs of the child, and that interprofessional practice between the special educators, the OTs, the speech language pathologists, and teachers is really important for the success of the child. Thank you very much. We're going to go on to question number 2, but before I do want to introduce another board member who joined us. Ms. Jean Halley is also on the call. Thanks, Jean, for joining us. So let's go to question number 2. How are students with special needs being prepared for successful transitions into paid employment, post-secondary experiences, and participating in their communities? How would you innovate to better support students with secondary transition? So, how about Ricardo? Could you respond to that?
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity. So at the high school level, I have the opportunity to work, as I mentioned before, with our learning and academic disability students. Those are students who are in general education classes. We roughly have 180 of them. And so in their IEP meetings, we're looking at transitioning into either technical schools or 2- and 4-year universities. And so oftentimes the biggest transition for them is how do they take their IEP with them to the school that they will be attending, or better yet, finding schools that are capable to work with students that have IEPs, because that's not something that major universities and schools are always adept at. And so it's really that piece that parents need guidance. And when you have one transition teacher in a high school that roughly services 200 plus students, depending on the number of programs in the building, you see the need for more transitional service staff to support that, because programs are very unique. So that's one piece. The other piece is working with students that are in our Learning for Independence. Those students, Down syndromes or spina bifida, they're going to need more of the community experience. And so Montgomery County does have what we have a lot of acronyms in Montgomery County. We do have the Tri-C, which is Community and Career Connections. And then we also have TTI, which is Transition Training for Independence. And those programs are for students who are of the age of 18, who have good attendance, and who have those skills through interviews and application process to go into those programs. The need for our students in that program are more opportunities. When you're looking at a county like Montgomery County and you only have 2 of those transition programs in the system, we outnumber the number of students that those systems can serve, that those programs can serve. We at the school level have our on-the-job training programs where we actually send our students to local businesses such as the Green Turtle, Squisitos, PetSmart, so that they can get hands-on training in the community. Those programs are needed for that population as well, because again, once they transition out of high school, whether it be at 18 through these 2 programs that I mentioned in Montgomery County, or they age out and now at 21, they need the adult service programs that are able to bring them in, like the bakery centers and some of these coffee shops that are in various communities that assist that population to really transition. Not all of them are going to be able to transition to independent living or semi-independent living. And so really the programs that need to serve them aren't there in abundance. And so that is on my wish list. If I had $1 million, which I know is down the line, it would be to create more of those educational experiences, not just for the students in the building, but the transitional students when they leave the building, that they have that opportunity. Because once they do get out from my school into, like I said, a Green Turtles, Quisitos, PetSmart, they really do a great job and are a huge asset to the community. And it really creates a self-worth knowing that they have something that they can look forward to when they leave.
I have a follow-up on that. What do you think are barriers to creating more opportunities for students?
Human capital. And I mean, train staff to support them in that setting, train staff to be able to implement programs and plans. Plans and programs are great until they're implemented. And if you don't have the human capital to implement them, you don't have the financial resources, the community resources. Businesses have to take a chance.
Right.
The community has to take a chance in order for these things to occur. And if you don't have the human capital to build those connections and really expand that experience, those are one of a few barriers that get in the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Really good information. Melanie, do you have a response for that?
Yes, actually, I can understand what Ricardo is saying, but I don't always feel as though it applies to a child like mine who is on the more severe end of the autism spectrum. And when you speak about transitioning, I know they say it begins at 14, but I think it begins long before that. And the transition process, I think it takes, when you have a child, again, with such profound needs, sometimes getting just beyond the moment, beyond the day, can be an incredible struggle. And at 19, for instance, we're struggling with toileting, and to think about going into some of these places to work when you have these types of issues, it doesn't always speak to my or the population that I think I'm looking at. And if I, at this point, were to speak to my younger self, I would say you have to become very organized. As a parent of a child with autism, you have to be incredibly organized. And everything that you do, everything that happens, or so much of it, you don't realize at this early age has a profound impact later on as you begin to apply for the various benefits. And while other people look forward to graduation day and prom and picking out that class ring, we're applying for SSI benefits. We are working on what law firm we'll use to petition the courts for guardianship. So much of what we're going through, I think, again, when it's on the more profound end, is incredibly challenging. And I know recently, just in working with our IEP, it's working with the IEP for us. So much of it is built around things that are just fundamental, the ADLs, not so much of this type of learning that I wish my child had that ability, but there are so many things that need to be addressed before so much of what some of the educators are speaking to. And again, the fact that when that bus no longer pulls up at the house, what do? And fortunately, we have been receiving services through the Maryland Autism Waiver, and it has been phenomenal. And I wish that every child who qualified for the autism waiver had access to it. I wish Sherry Wiseman's name was household. I wish that there were so many things, just simple things, that could help lessen the stress of what a parent with a child on the spectrum experiences. And for far too many, that relief is not there.
Thank you so much. That is a perspective that is important to be brought out to people. And I commend you and laud you for not only the work with your child, but your willingness to speak up and to help other families. So thank you. The last person for this question, I'd like to ask Blanca if she would like to respond to this.
Definitely, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Melanie, and thank you, everyone, for having a conversation to pull in. And sometimes it may seem like something is being called out, but it's actually being pulled in. I want to start just by saying briefly that every child and every human being is more than an acronym. Even though we have things like CP and IEP and SSI, and we have REM and GPAs. So to encourage everyone that that children often are measured, and they're one of the tallest giants that I have ever met. I would like to share that for our situation, we have a 14-year-old who has physical and cognitive and developmental due to being born premature. And so what I would like to suggest is that a coalition of a tapestry, a beautiful tapestry of where actually parents and or caregivers and educators, we would have a coalition where we can actually learn similar to this. It's not just a forum to hear, but I often think that I think Miss Melanie and Alexandra would agree. I know of Miss Alexandra from a training that very seldom do the challenges get shared for special needs families, and very seldom do the victories get celebrated. And so I would suggest that we would have a coalition of sorts where it is not what we tell what to do, but we share, even in our own experience, what has worked, because we also have a small group, and that's called mom and that child. That's a small group. It could be the aunt and raising that niece.
Yes.
That's a small group. And so I am wholeheartedly will never waver from this idea that there are excellent teachers, there are eager students,
Yep.
and they are engaged parents.
Yep.
And if we could collaborate, I know that word came up before, if we could collaborate to really assist, we could do more with that human capital that Ricardo mentioned, and even that collaboration that Annabelle reminded us. Without us understanding how each of us is truly amazing first and truly in need, I believe that sometimes the answer is really we're looking at each other, and we have that. I don't have a child that perhaps is no longer in a wheelchair, but I didn't know that, you know. And so it would be helpful to have a coalition of really the ones in the trenches, but that don't stay there and really can advocate for all families at whatever level that child is academically or otherwise.
Thank you. That is another wonderful specific recommendation. And it's true, we don't want to remain in our silos, because the silos, we know that just doesn't work. So thank you for that. I'd like to go on to question number 3. And question number 3 is, what is working well in early childhood programs, including pre-kindergarten, infants and toddlers programs, and special education services for students in pre-kindergarten through 3rd grade? So here are some thoughts. Can you describe evidence-based interventions that are currently being used and their outcomes? Are students in pre-kindergarten programs included in classes with typically developing peers? And what is that impact? And can you talk about parent access to services? And maybe you might want to talk about what can be improved. So I know that's a big laundry list, so you don't have to take all of them, but maybe take a piece of that, because anything that you can provide us with will be helpful. How about Fariha?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Fariha. I'm a teacher in Baltimore City. I've been a special educator for 8 years, and I've also been serving as an IEP chair. When Mr. Choudhury was talking earlier in the meeting about just the need to elevate our outcomes for everybody, especially students with disabilities, that really just resonated strongly with me. I actually was born in Pakistan and grew up in Pakistan. And in Pakistan, I think we're still quite a few light years behind when we think about special education. I think about my own aunt and the access to education she had in Pakistan. She had a disability. She was never even diagnosed with a disability, but she was pulled out of school in 3rd grade and never got a 4th grade education or any education beyond 3rd grade. So now, you know, she's an adult who's working really, really hard, but just did not get what she needed from an educational perspective and an education system. So when I think about Pakistan and when I think about so many other countries around the world, I'm really confident in the improvements that we're making to special education across the United States. I think that just all of our professional learning and research around special education has intensified, and we better understand neurodivergence just as practitioners and as research scientists. And you know, I think we've come a long way, not just from my aunt's experience, but even from when I was in elementary school not that long ago. We put all of our students with disabilities, we isolated them to like one classroom, and we didn't have the best understanding of a least restrictive environment or proper accommodations and scaffolds. So when I think about some evidence-based practices and research, I think we're really implementing a lot across the country. Personally, I'm a teacher and I teach elementary school pre-K. I've done pre-K, K, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. Actually, I've done it all the way up to middle school. But I see so many benefits of full day pre-K programs. I'm really excited to see the blueprint legislation expand universal pre-K. I think that's absolutely the right move forward, especially because we know that universal pre-K access and proactive supports help our students and our families way more in the long run than intervening on the back end with an IEP and just the different tiers of support. And then I've also, to specifically answer the question, I've also worked with infants and toddlers in the Let's Grow program in Baltimore City Public Schools. And I really just appreciate my district leaders pushing for equity and access for all students and keeping us all, just reminding us of the importance of exposing every single child to their grade level curriculum, no matter what their ability level or disability is, because every single student has a right to be exposed to grade level material. And then, we put in the proper scaffolds that students really need to help build the bridge from where they currently are and where state level standards expect them to be. So I think my CEO, Dr. Santelises, and the director of the Office of Special Education, Dr. Brooks, do a really phenomenal job with sharing research, leveraging high leverage practices for all of us to use. They actually gave us like an electronic copy of the high leverage practices book. And I have been reading a chapter of that every single week and just, sharing the things that I'm learning with my professional teams that I'm facilitating at school. And then I also appreciate my district's ability to just recognize teachers as professionals and as the experts. And they've actually encouraged a lot of teachers who are actually directly in the classroom to facilitate professional learning for the entire district. I had the privilege of sharing my best practices for working with students with disabilities during the pandemic. And that was a really, really helpful exercise. All the feedback was really positive and teachers just felt like they learned a lot learning from another teacher. And even though I was the presenter, I learned a lot just from the
Absolutely.
and all the collaboration happening in the chat box.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Rupert, would you like to respond to this question?
Yes, I would. Can you go ahead and spotlight me? Yeah, I want to make sure that you can see
I can
me.
see
Would
you.
you
I
hear the
can see
voice?
you. Yes, I can see you.
Oh yeah, okay, perfect. All right. Yeah, so thank you so much for giving me a few moments here to talk about this. So I also think that with the two of them, the outcomes there that we were talking about for deaf graduates after high school, it's not equitable. We notice there are special college that have deaf students, and we notice that the outcomes are not valuable for them. And we have students with disabilities. And deaf children, we notice with them, they have small groups, they have small numbers, and they have a range of disabilities. And they only have one specific special need. They don't always have one specific special need. Yeah, and we notice that they spread out all over, and sometimes we notice in the Western Maryland area that the services there, they're really small, they're not enough. And after they graduate from high school, we notice that they go into vocational rehab therapy and the services there. In vocational rehab, they really don't have knowledge of the deaf. We need more vocational rehab counselors to go ahead and help with them. And that means that we don't have the right services. We don't have enough services for them. And also, when we go back to the school system, it's very important that they have exposure to language acquisition. And does that mean that they have to view themselves as a small group, an isolated group in the area? But how do we go ahead and make sure that they're included in that mainstream experience? We did have COVID that happened, and there was a lot of virtual learning. And we noticed that there was some success through that. Yeah, so with the virtual learning, we thought that the students did have exposure to language with that, and they were able to go ahead and see visually and understand the English, the language, the sentences that were included in all of that. Yeah, and some of it might have been kind of tough to go ahead and transfer that over to their language. And then if we go back and look at the outcomes that were successful, really the language, the foundation of the language, that's very meaningful. And
Yeah.
that needs to start before the age of 5. They need so much
Absolutely.
exposure of that. And they also have sometimes a limited access to their language. But it's so important that they have full access to language. And for example, during COVID, with the schools all over the country, we noticed it was similar all over. Children from hearing families who don't sign, they didn't have enough skill in sign language. The students were there all by themselves, and it was very frustrating. So schools for deaf, you know, they might have had the videos on, virtual learning, and they were able to have a lot of exposure, and they were able to look at their peers and look at the teachers all over.
Right.
But we don't have these deaf schools all over the country. Most of them are in mainstreams. They're in
Right.
special ed programs. Maybe they're the only deaf child in their entire school.
Right.
And so that's an example of how it really impacts them, and it impacts those deaf and hard of hearing children. And we really want to go ahead and lead to more positive outcomes for them. Thank you guys so much for a few seconds letting me talk about this topic.
Thank you so much. Near and dear to my heart is language acquisition as a speech language pathologist. So thank you for sharing. And also, we also understand that we have a lot of needs in education, from teachers, special ed teachers, occupational therapists, teachers of the deaf, speech language pathologists, and we just don't train enough. And so that is a barrier that I don't know, Superintendent Choudhury, how we handle that, but we do need more of us. We're very important to the thread of this society. So thank you so much. And thank you, Nia, for contributing on the chat. I am, in the sake of time, in the name of time, I'm going to move on to the next question. And the next question is, let's see. Describe the characteristic qualities and practices of the most impactful teachers and school leaders for students with disabilities. So things like, are there successful schools, use of systems and procedures that lead to services that promote success for students? How is success defined or measured? And Superintendent Choudhury said that before. So respond in any way that you see fit. But I think that not just the teacher qualities, but also systems in schools that promote ability for teachers to do what they need to do. So how about Lisa and Shaylin? Would you like to respond?
Hi. I apologize. My daughter got anxiety at the last second.
Oh,
But she did write something that she wanted me to say.
great.
Her name is Shaylin. She has cerebral palsy. She is in Somerset County Middle School. She is in 7th grade, and she is with general education students with an IEP. And she wanted me to say that the teacher that was most impactful was her special education teacher. She always helps me. She checks in on me all the time, and I can talk to her when I'm having a bad day.
That's great. That's really good. Tell her thank you for sharing that.
I will.
Appreciate that. I appreciate. Annabelle, would you like to respond to that question?
Yeah, so the most impactful teachers and school leaders for students with disabilities are the ones that really hold the bar high for rigor, that have high expectations for everybody. And you know, when you go into a building, you'll feel the belongingness and the sense of community. So it includes everybody. Nobody is isolated. And school leaders and teachers who have ears for the students and parents. They are willing to listen. They build a trusting and collaborative, you know, relationship with parents. And of course, the leaders and teachers that are impactful are those lifelong learners that are not really afraid to learn more and to adapt the new or innovative technology or new teaching trends, and also self-reflective. You know, like they're willing to what worked well during the day, what needs to be better. And of course, I think the most impactful is when teachers really have a good lesson planning, wherein they are really including in their lesson plan how to support those students with disabilities, and really trying to reach them, and not just a particular group of students, but everybody. I think that's a very good quality too, or like a good practice. And then for school leaders, of course, empowering other teachers and staff members to do the work and not just own it, or just like, oh, I'm gonna do everything, but really share the work. And also, of course, relationship builders, and again with parents and community, and it's have this quality of like working as a team. And also utilize data, not data driven, but always utilizing data. And I think I'm going to let other teachers and participants to share as well.
Thank you. Ricardo, I'd love to come back to you for this question as an assistant principal.
What can't you love about special education teachers? To be honest. And I mean that from the amount of time and caring and dedication that they put into their students, whether they're in the building or they're not. To be a special education teacher takes a certain type of soul, because they become intimate with the family, and I mean that in the most respectful way. They make connections with the family that others can't, because there is that need to be so in constant contact with the students and the students' parents to make sure that everything is going in the right place. And so what I find that our teachers and the teachers that I have had the pleasure of hiring, their students come first, besides their families. Their attention to detail is impeccable. They plan. They are the best planners in the building, and because they have to have so many balls in the air, so to speak. I look at our learning for independent students, from the autistic student to the student with Down syndrome to the student with spina bifida. They have to worry about their toileting schedules. They have to worry about their home schedules. They have to worry about the bus schedules, and when we're going to do a fire alarm because it sets off certain students. And these are all the intricacies that these special education teachers know and spend time in getting to know. And they're the ones that have that connection that you really can't touch. It's just a certain bond there. So that to me is what kind of encompasses a special education teacher in and of itself. And there's many more, so please don't get me wrong. There are many more, but those are just a few that come to mind right away.
If you can spend just 1 minute on any systems, school-wide systems that facilitate the work. Sometimes things get in the way of doing the work. So what kind of systems do you have in place in your school that you think facilitates the good work of our special ed teachers and instructional support personnel?
So I'm also the master scheduler. So I ensure that I build in professional learning community time, PLC time, common planning time, not just amongst our special education teachers, but against the English, social studies, and try to build it in a way that there can be cross-curricular planning, so that there is that piece. We do send our special education students from the LFI program into general classes. Obviously, our LAD students are in inclusion classes all the time. And we also have a bridge program at my school. And those kids, have their own set of needs and so forth. So I really try to be intentional in regards to the schedule that I build so that the teachers can collaborate, so that when students are going from across programs, everyone has the knowledge needed to serve that student in their best possible way. And I also think when we have at the beginning of the year and we sit down, we talk about our students, we have very intentional communications as to each individual student, what their needs are and where we're starting from, back mapping and where we need them to get to. And so that again, that happens, and that communication is constant. So I make sure that they're always communicating with each other, because I think that's key.
That is huge, and thank you. And you responded to the conversation in the first question. So thank you so
Okay.
much. Because that's
It's incidental.
teachers are saying time to co-plan, time to talk to each other, time to help each other understand the whole child, and not just that little
Yes.
bite of the elephant. So
Well, and it's not easy.
it's not.
Testing is a big time chunk that doesn't always allow for that.
Right.
Special schedules for various activities that go on during the, there's so many things that are pulling teachers away from the work, systematic things that we can't always control, and that's always pulling at their time. And so whatever I can do to build some more time back in, we always tell the value of time. I try to do.
Thank you so much. I'd like to go to question number 5. And question number 5 regards family engagement. So strong family engagement is a predictor of student success. I have seen this throughout my career. How are local school systems communicating with and engaging students with special needs and their families? What are schools doing well? And what could be done to engage and communicate better with families? And also, from a family perspective, what do families need to feel secure with homeschool communication? So I would like to ask Alex if she would like to respond to that.
Sure. My son, we're in Howard County. And when he started the IEP, he was 2.5 and he was nonverbal. He started to speak at 4. And when he spoke, I think his first word he spoke at school during classes. So we all had a great celebration after that. And after speaking, he was making progress one after another. And then the school staff and myself, we just became a team. We started calling ourselves a team. And that really is true. And then when you are dealing, whether you're raising a child of your own or teaching a child with disability, it is so hard to see beyond the lack of ability, lack of communication, lack of whatever the normally developing child will have in that particular time. And once the family, moms probably have tendency to see beyond the leg and believe that my child can do this, or my child can achieve this goal, and then having that discrepancy, all those the different ideas or different understandings, having all of that on the same plate is so important. Because I remember when he was in 5th grade, I did survey in the school. Well, when we were about to talk about this survey that I completed, because he was transitioning to middle school. So my son is completed a set of tests, and I finished survey. And the school psychologist was, she had this concerned look, because my survey, it showed that he was outside of the spectrum. So her first question was, Mrs. Kim, do you think, your child has autism? And my answer was yes, and she was so relieved. So the communication factor is so important. I mean, early on, I noticed that, because of the autism, he has problem expressing himself. We never knew how much he knew. So the communication from himself was so limited. We were just teaching him and teaching him. We were not getting any responses back. So we don't know whether he already knows this or not, whether he already mastered math problems or vocabularies. We would never know. And then but that does not mean that he's intellectually impaired. That was the one thing that got me confused. Even though he wasn't responding, he was not intellectually impaired. So what he would do is that he would push his teachers or myself to see how much he can get away with not doing homework or not doing anything. So then we had to gang up on him. all the teachers and myself and my husband and all my other children. I had to have a plan. I have to have an action plan where everybody understands the same thing and where everybody will tell him that's not allowed.
Right. That's great.
I mean, I am in constant communication with the teachers. I don't know whether it's just that our son's particular school or district or county, but they reach out to me by email, by calling me, by texting me. They'll try to get a hold of me whenever they need to, for whatever reason, and any time of the day, because I always tell them, call me, text me, just reach me. I will have the answer. Now we have a mutual understanding that I know what they know about my son, and they know what I can do with my son. So
That's great.
when they see my son having struggles, and the other day, one of the teachers said, I tried to be Mrs. Kim and it worked. Yes, it does. Because I show them, how I deal with him. And it's very difficult because sometimes I don't want to expose everything about what's going on in our house, because I do want to hide something. I do want to have some secrets.
Thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate this. I do want to have some feedback from a couple of people, so I'm going to tell you the order that I'm going to ask people. So I would like to hear from Jen, who we have not heard from yet. And then I would like to ask Blanca to respond, and then Rupert. And so if I can ask you, not that I don't want to hear everything, but if I can ask you to keep your responses concise, because we would like to get to some questions from the YouTube. But I do want you to get your information out. So let's roll with that. Okay, Jen.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be, a lot of the comments that the parents have been stating have resonated with me, and I just want to let you know that I see you. And one of the things that I really love about this question, that the word family is in it, because the school system and the community, we are a family, and oftentimes we feel like we're not, and it's important that we take it upon ourselves as that family to continue to collaborate and to find avenues, and even to create the own avenues that we don't see, and I think that is the strongest space, is creating those avenues that we don't get a chance to see. I feel like when my son's teacher sees how intense we are and how much we want for them to get to know him, they're like, wow, we should really continue to pay attention, to hold space for the fact that this family really wants to show him to us. They really want for us to get to know him. And in turn, what we do is we create social stories at the end or at the beginning of every school year. And we've been doing it since 3rd grade. And so my son is 9, and we create these little booklets. And so this just a quick image description for those who have low vision. It's like a small zine, which is short for magazine, and it says, "This is me." And it basically opens up to kind of tell his teachers and his family and friends his own kind of journey. And shout out to my fellow NICU moms that are on the call. My son was 31 weeks, and he was a preemie, and he's also autistic. So we're very intentional about the fact that he comes from a different body mind, that he has his own means of expressing himself. And then there's a really cool space here that talks a little bit about his challenges, and it actually folds out into an entire booklet that kind of breaks down who he is, and it has a fun illustration of him on the back that he collaborated with another artist to talk about. And here's another little one, and it just kind of introduces himself and saying, hey, like, my name is Kevin. And there's a whole letter on the back that breaks down his accessibility needs. And I create these digital templates to provide to families so that they can come in on the first day, whether it's at, the first back to school night, or whether it's for like, the early orientation meeting, and they come in with these really beautiful narratives that are written by the kid, or a combination of writing them with their parents, of how much they deeply appreciate the educators, but these are some of the ways that you can help me. These are my challenges, and this is who I am, and this is why I stim. This is why, like, I need constant breaks. So it's basically like we're developing like our own mini like IEP or something to kind of help bring visibility to, this is why the IEP makes the most sense for our family, but this is how we're writing our own version of our son's accessibility needs. And it's been really helpful. And so I feel like the more as parents that we can just show up, and even if it's online, even if it's, in person, as long as we're just constantly there at the school. And we're fortunate because the school that my son goes to in Baltimore County, it's a small community school. And so it's really accessible to the kids in the neighborhood, and they've all, been living in that community since first grade. And so what's been helpful for him as an autistic kid is feeling safe and feeling like, hey, like, I remember so and so from kindergarten and they're still here with me. It's like we try to keep him in the same comfortable space. And I know that's not always realistic, but I think that's one of the things that's really helped my son. And also having family become advocates, and special shout out to my mother-in-law who's on this call, to, kind of holding space for former educators who want to continue to give back. And so what she does is she helps to create beautiful exchanges and relationships with families. And her name is Barbara Johnson. So make sure to reach out to us. Baltimore County also has a community schools initiative, and it's a shared decision-making team, which basically helps to address very intentional questions. And this is the last thing that I'll say before we start.
Thank you so much.
Like hold your cities, hold your communities accountable. Like, what kind of shared decision team making, like what kind of shared decision making teams does your school have with you? Like, do your kids need new coats? We all know our kids grew like 50,000 pounds, like from the start of the pandemic to when they went back into school. So who needs coats? Who needs
Right.
shoes? Who needs socks? Like,
Right.
those are very like real, practical, accessible needs that the community needs. So
Thank you.
what's the collaborative process like?
Right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I do want to just now, we're going to continue to have people respond, but there are many comments from YouTube. There has been so much great participation on YouTube, and we thank you so much. And I want to share a few of the comments of the group. The viewers love the zine idea, so thank you for sharing that. And there are more on my I can't see because I don't have my glasses on. I'll cover that in a little bit, and I'll put my glasses on in a little bit. But there, I just want to shout out to the YouTube viewers. We'll come back to you. Blanca, can you just very concisely provide a response? And then I do want to go to Rupert, and then we want to give some time to the YouTube viewers. So thank you.
Definitely. And the only thing I wanted to share regarding the question number 4 that I prepared for is that what characteristic qualities and practices. Sadly to say to you, I have not seen that in Baltimore City Public Schools in our area where we live. Unfortunately, COVID, as you know, did pause everything, and I believe that the practice to communicate more effectively definitely would have helped our family and other families. COVID suspended evaluations starting in April. We waited till October. And this is not to, we're not calling anyone out, I understand, but it's important to understand what happened, not just to our own family, but it wasn't until just February of this year that we could enroll my son back again. And it saddens me to tell you this, that when we re-enrolled our son, this is why communication, intentionality, we've just heard, is so important. Because when I did enroll my son back, the principal said to me, "Who told you that your son can come to my school?" That was painful. We are volunteers as special needs parents and kids, even if we don't have special needs. And so I wanted to remind each other, and I wanted to remind myself also, that intentionality can also be, we can improve in being intentional to make sure that our administrators, teachers, and parents, because we're always going to have excellent teachers that from engaged students, from engaged parents, and that's going to make this work, and that's what's going to make Dr. Choudhury's position and work really thrive in our state.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. From our YouTube viewers, and Rupert, I'm going to get to you in a minute. From Joseph from Calvert County Special Education Citizens Advisory Committee Chair, he said staffing to the student needs sometimes leads to itinerant staff like OT, SLP, PT, etc., has them covering multiple schools across the county, and the time that they spend in driving from campus to campus is lost to the work of collaboration and the actual work with children. So once again, staffing is something that we need to put in our pot and start, Superintendent. One more, we have someone from Cecilia. Something that works well is meaningful collaboration across agencies whose staff make up the family's care community, child care, ITP, Judy centers, EHS, and other home visitors. When these agencies can work together to do some similar training and ensure that they have an integrated approach, and families hear a consistent message and resources that are shared and extended. So thank you for that. I also want to call your attention. Nia has placed some wonderful information and responses on our chat. And she said that her daughter has ADHD and ASD, and she's in a full-day special pre-K, and it's been recently integrated into a classroom with typically developing students. And her daughter calls it her special class and has expressed that she no longer wants to go to school. So her teachers, both new and regular classroom, met with Nia yesterday to discuss it, and they were really able to figure out why her daughter might be upset. And once again, that communication and that brainstorming for the benefit of the child. So thank you for contributing that, Nia. I appreciate it. I would like to get to Rupert, who has expressed an interest in responding to, I think, question number 5 or 4. 5? Okay. Go ahead, Rupert.
It's number 4.
Okay.
So the most impactful thing for the teachers and the staff and the leaders. Can you spotlight him?
I can't, but I think staff can.
Yeah. So the most impactful thing that I think is beneficial we need to look at those people who are the leaders, the people who have the most impact. So often we notice that deaf children, maybe they're in the mainstream school and they grow up in that area and they have never met another deaf individual and they don't have any idea about that life and what it entails. And so when we put staff and teachers and leaders who are deaf themselves, they can look up to them as role models because they're the same as them and they can understand that. And that's truly impactful for them for their entire life. And they know about the deaf community. They can be informed about that and that experience and make memories from a young child as they're growing up. Even if they briefly meet somebody who's a deaf individual, it's really amazing to them. And someone who they can see who uses full sign language, their language, it's such an impact. It gives them such great self-confidence. And it's really valuable that we have those educators and those leaders in the school system. And also, we see some teachers, the teachers of the deaf, they really have dwindled down. And there's a lot of needs that we have here. And we need to make sure that we meet those needs and make sure that we have good cognition between the two different groups of educators and teachers of the deaf. And we also need people who are really excited about recruitment and recruitment with skilled people all over. You know, it's a very competitive, and we notice that there are a few people that actually have those skills. So we know that there are some placements that can be done, but we notice that other states, they have more competitive rates and pay scales and things like that. So we need to go ahead and focus on that right now. And just as kind of an example, there's available positions for those who have that skill set. We want to make them be able to come to this school system. And for the deaf and hard of hearing, they really need to be focused on them. We see that deaf have very specific needs, and there needs to be a good balance. And sometimes it isn't the same as the mainstream kids. Oftentimes we see that they focus on the mainstream kids and not the deaf children. The deaf schools, they have deaf services, they have disability services. Sometimes that is a struggle for them to add those disability services. But here we see in the mainstream schools, sometimes they don't have the
Right.
services for the deaf children. They focus on the disability services. So sometimes we have to bring that together and have a whole collaborative effort.
Right.
And that's it. I'll zip it up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that's an important perspective, and a perspective that is not often heard about and from. So thank you very much for contributing. I would like to just also say that Nia also recommended the Parents' Place of Maryland, and that's an important place for parents to go to receive training and assistance. So thank you, Nia, for bringing that out. At this time, I think that we would like to talk about some questions or comments. Anybody from the live chat? I think we had a couple. I don't have any more coming in. So is there anyone on the panel that wants to just raise their hand and say one last thing briefly? Because I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, because we do have 3 minutes. So anyone? Yes, go ahead. Suzanne.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I wanted to respond real quick to question 4. I really believe, I wanted to echo what people were saying about building relationships, and most importantly with students and their families, but also between co-teachers. I have to give a shout out to Kyle. He has worked with me over the years, and because we have built such a good working relationship, it just goes so much more smoothly and seamless in our lessons.
Yep.
So
That's great. Thank you, Suzanne. One last.
That's
have-
good.
go ahead.
Liz, I don't think we haven't heard from Liz. She
Liz,
has
did we not call on you? Where are you?
I'm here. I'm here. And
sorry,
that's okay.
Liz.
That's okay.
Go
That's
ahead.
okay. I just wanted to talk about the teacher shortage for students, the teachers of the visually impaired. We have a great shortage in this area. And I wanted just to kind of bring it to the forefront that, you know, the Maryland State Department, in conjunction with the National Federation for the Blind, has done a fantastic job of collaborating and pulling together a cohort so that we could put at least 15 teachers out in the field right now. So that is helping us fill a gap that we need. But again, that's just a very small start. We need to really focus in on making sure that we build capacity for building, you know, for teaching these students with visual impairments and blindness. So.
I think that's an important issue for us as a board to look at in terms of expanding training and programming for specialized teachers that can help and integrate with general ed and special ed teachers. Thank you. I'm so sorry I didn't recognize you, but that's important, as well as teachers of the deaf and also other instructional personnel, support personnel. Elizabeth, your hand is up. So you want
I just wanted to add a little piece when Mr. Hernandez was talking about scheduling time in like the contents and when you're doing it in your schedule. As a middle school, typically we focused on grade level so that your grade level had a major collaboration. And about 2 years ago, my school switched to that high school mindset where the content really drove the collaboration. And I think that made a huge impact on a special educator's ability to get into that content and help general educators understand what special ed meant and looked like and needed in their content. And so we could reach more kids quickly by going to the content experts right in their common planning and breaking apart their lessons and teaching them in that moment what to do. And I think that theme of collaboration, that's something that is somewhat easy to implement in terms of reworking your schedule in the next year to make that your focus, as opposed to all of the other wonderful things we'd like to do that require money.
Right. Once again, a very specific recommendation, and thank you so much for that. At this time, it's 7:31, and to our participants and those of you on YouTube Live, the State Board and MSDE heartily thanks you for your caring, for your participation, for your willingness to provide information that will help us with our strategic planning process. We need to hear from as many of you as possible. So to that end, the department has launched a strategic planning survey. And we really encourage every Marylander to participate in that survey. It's marylandpublicschools.org/survey. Please, I'll repeat it again, marylandpublicschools.org/survey. We need to hear from you. It is important. And I want to mirror what Superintendent Choudhury said. We want to make sure that we raise the bar for excellence for all students, including our most struggling students, and we need your feedback to help us do that. So thank you in advance for taking the time to complete the survey. And we will also post a link to that in the Roundtable and YouTube chats, and please fill it out. I just can't ask you more than I already have. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. I know there are many other things, like Southwest Airlines says, there are many other ways you can choose to spend your time. I'm very happy and honored that you chose to spend it with us on the Roundtable. We look forward to working collaboratively with you and our communities, and we want to ensure that every Maryland student, every Maryland child has their opportunities needed to realize their full potential. And we're serious about that. So thank you, board members. Thank you, Jean, for participating. And Rachel was here a little bit ago. And Superintendent Choudhury, thank you so much for your long hours and your dedication. And Roundtable participants, we're so thrilled. Thank you. And YouTube Live viewers, can't thank you enough. So we will sign off and say good night and have a wonderful evening and a good almost weekend. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Night.
Night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you to our interpreters.
Yes, I forgot to say that. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
very much. That was a
We're going to end the recording now.
Thank you, everyone.